How to get rich with 100K? We're going to answer that question in this video. Okay, let's rock. Let's talk about it. So somehow, some way you've saved $100,000 and you know that's not enough money to be rich, right? I mean, you can get a couple nice things. You can buy this, buy that, but you're not rich with $100,000. True statement. Not in today's day and age, not here in the United States, maybe in some foreign countries, but not in the US. So you're wondering, what do I do with this $100,000? I don't know what to do with it. I was thinking about going to buy a nice car, never had a boat. I was going to buy a boat for the lake or an expensive piece of jewelry. Don't do that, and I think you know better because you're looking at ways to invest it. So, first and foremost, I am not a certified financial advisor. I want everybody to know that. So always seek a financial advisor for investment advice. But I'll tell you what I would do and what I have done with my own $100,000, okay? And this is the smartest way that I have found out to grow money with $100,000. There's plenty of people in the world that are super smart at investing money, but I'll tell you something, it's an art. Once you learn it, there's some secret fundamentals that if you just understand the basics about investing money, that's kind of mostly what you need as long as you're keeping up, keeping in the right circles, reading articles, being ahead of the trends and things like that. You just need a few basic fundamentals to make money, okay? So the key is, how do you grow money? How do you take 100,000 and turn it into $1 million? How do you take that million and turn it into 10 million? That's the question. So one of the biggest things you need to learn is how to properly diversify your investments, okay? So don't invest all your eggs in one basket. You've heard that before. Don't put everything into one basket. Now you could get lucky. You could put all 100,000 into a specific stock, all 100,000 into crypto, right? All 100,000 into real estate, and you could get incredibly lucky. That happens all the time. But that's not the strategy. We were talking earlier about some basic fundamentals. That's kind of a get rich or bust kind of concept, right? Betting the farm on one number, hoping that it hits, and if it does, you got rich. That's not the strategy we're going to teach you, okay? What you've got to learn how to do is diversify. And what they mean by that is taking a portion of that $100,000 and putting it into one investment, another portion and put it into a different investment, all right? Do that 5 to 10 different ways. That's what's advisable by most financial advisors. I've learned that from watching them, hearing them speak on stage, making a lot of phone calls. I have friends that are financial advisors, right? And that's what they recommend. This is a big reason why, if we're talking just about the stock market, why people buy indexes, why they buy the whole NASDAQ, right? The whole S&P, is because they're, in a sense, they're diversifying their money within that asset class. Okay, now let's talk about an asset class. What is an asset class? An asset class would be something like stocks. Stocks are completely different than real estate, two different asset classes. They're each considered an asset, but it's kind of like, when you think of classes, think of categories. They're different categories, okay? So people tell you to put your money into different categories, different asset classes, okay? So when you buy like the S&P or the NASDAQ, you're only buying one asset class, right? You're buying stocks, but you're diversifying the heck out of your investment because you're owning a bit and piece of all the different companies within the S&P or within the NASDAQ, okay? Make sense? So when you understand that, the best way to invest long-term with the least amount of downside is to diversify into good investments into different asset classes and do your best to diversify within each one of those. So like I explained the example of stocks. Let's look into another one, commodities. Let's look into gold. That's another one that I like a lot. So you can invest a lot into gold. Well, here's the beautiful thing about that. Just like stocks, there's different versions of precious metals. So a lot of people that own gold, they also own some silver, they own some platinum, they might own some palladium. There's other different metals that have different uses, different case uses for different types of materials. You know, I remember back in the day, like catalytic converters used to have platinum in them, right? A little bit of platinum, but they didn't have gold. They didn't maybe have silver. They might have had a little silver. But there's a lot of industrial uses for silver, say that maybe platinum doesn't have and maybe gold doesn't have and vice versa. So that's kind of investing in a different asset class and then diversifying within that asset class. And the more that you do this, the more you minimize your risks long term. Because the key, remember, the number one rule of investing is to not lose money, period, right? Don't lose your money. don't lose your principal. So if you have $100,000 and you've earned that yourself, you've been living every day, every month, every year, you've been able to save your money, you've had to pay your taxes, you've had unforeseen expenses come up. If you've saved, if you're savvy enough that you've saved $100,000 of your hard-earned money and you didn't get it from somebody else, you value that, right? So you know the pain of what it would feel like to lose it. So again, back to rule number 1 in investing, do not lose your principal, do not lose money. You know what rule number 2 is? It's kind of funny. Refer back to rule number 1. It's kind of a joke, but you've seen it multiple times. I've heard it, seen it on the internet, whatever. Bottom line, there's one rule. Don't lose money, right? The first cardinal rule. So after you figure that out, let's start diversifying. So talk with your financial advisor. There's so many different companies, and make sure to try to find somebody that you trust, somebody that's good. Just like anything with money, there's good and there's bad, right? There's going to be some bad apples out there that really only have their own personal best interests in mind, which is why it's best to go get like a certified fiduciary. Fiduciaries are required by law to work in your interest. So they cannot selfishly try to give you investment advice to only make themselves money. They actually have to be giving you advice to help make you more money, and then they get their cut. Does that make sense? So find yourself a fiduciary and then shop around. If you're going to find a financial advisor, they all charge fees, right? So you want to find one that has the lowest fee. Shop around. But remember, lowest fee doesn't always mean best option, because sometimes in life, and most times in life, you get what you pay for. So if you're paying the cheapest, you can't always expect to get the best, right? Does that make sense? Because usually the best are charging for it. But sometimes you get lucky enough where the best actually are not charging as much as they could or they should or whatever. They're kind of down here in the middle. So that would be my goal, is to find some company, a financial investment company that's had a proven track record for at least a couple decades. That's what you would prefer, right? At least 20, 30 years is what you'd prefer. Not that somebody that's been around for 10 years isn't good. They might have a great 10-year track record. They just don't have as many, stats to pull from, right? Find somebody with a couple decades, find that company, shop around, kind of see what you got, and then ask them for their advice. Say, hey, where should I put $100,000? And say, hey, I've been watching videos on YouTube and they're saying I should diversify, and they're going to agree with that. They're not going to tell you to put all your money into one spot. If they are, I would recommend, off the record, go on and go find somebody else, right? So then after you figure out who you're going to have coach you basically to put your money in, try your best to immediately find 5 different spots or more to put that money. Now there's a counter argument to this. I know there's people, that have argued and said, nope, this is what I do. And by the way, cash is considered an asset class. So keeping some money in cash is always good to have, right? So that would be a spot where you would want to keep money. You don't want to spend all your money so you have no cash. So some is cash. But I know some people that actually only have 2 asset classes. They keep like half their money in cash and half their money in precious metals, or half their money in cash and half their money in real estate, half their money in cash and half their money in cryptocurrency. I know people like that. They don't want to deal with anything else. That's their little lagoon that they play in. And if you compare it to like the oceans, the whole sea of investments, they like to play in their own little lagoon, right? Their own little blue lagoon. They play in that area and they're like, nope, real estate, cash. That's all I deal in. I just want to deal with money and real estate, right? Precious metals, real estate. And you know what? Depending on what type of investments they're making, if they're like those are more conservative, because in general, like if you're into investing into residential real estate and you've understood it, you understand that there's not a lot of downside risk compared to, your long-term benefit and upside, right? And same with precious metals. If you look at the history over the last, say, 40 or 50 years, the chart for gold and precious metals, it has gone up, right? Now it's gone up, down, it's gone up. So is the prices of real estate, right? And so is the prices so far overall of the strong cryptocurrencies. You've seen the same trend. So the way you get rich, let's answer that question. We said diversification, but also time and being able to find the right interest rate, so that if you take that amount of time and that interest rate, eventually that 100,000 will double. And the goal is to double that money within the least amount of time as safely as possible. You get it? So you don't want to find get rich quick schemes, because those usually have the highest risk, and usually those don't pan out and you lose your money. But you want to find stuff like, say you can find residential real estate that maybe pays you, I've seen 20, 25, 30% return on your money. You could buy a cheap house for $50,000. So if you have 100, you buy 2 of them and you pay cash for them. So you own them. and then you immediately start charging $1,000 a month in rent. Well, if you do the math on a $50,000 investment, if you're charging like $1,000 a month in rent, you're roughly making 20+% return on your $50,000 investment, right? And as long as you're not spending that $1,000, it's growing the money. And then you take that, and in a couple years, because you have 2 houses, you'd have enough money to buy another house, right? And then in a couple years, you maybe could buy 2 more houses. And before you know it, a decade or 2 passes and you have like 30 houses, right? And they're all paid off and you're making the income off those houses. So that's one way. And again, there's many other ways to get there. But if you're looking for like a fairly safe way and some way that 90+% of the wealthiest people in the world have gotten rich is, through real estate. So maybe find yourself some cheap houses or something like that and do that. Or find yourself some investments that you feel are safe. Like I said, with gold, relatively safe to put your money into it. Hold your physical gold, hang on to it for years and years and years. It could take 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, and you should see some returns on your investment. Okay, so I hope this video was helpful. I absolutely enjoyed this one. If you liked it, please feel free to click the like button and don't forget to comment. I'd love to hear your comments, suggestions about future videos, anything I can do to try and help y'all. And don't forget to subscribe, please. There's that big fancy subscribe button. Please click that. And remember, in life, in business, it's never easy for anybody. When the going gets tough, never quit. Keep hustling, push hard, push harder, and be the hustler.